Deep within the heart of California lies a cave that whispers tales of terror, Midnight Creek Cave. On May 11, 1996, this forbidden underground realm, sealed off since 1994, stood as a silent warning to all who dared approach. Its reputation wasn't built on mere legends or ghost stories, but on the very real threat of deadly hydrogen sulfide gas lurking in its depths, an invisible killer waiting in the darkness. Despite the cave's ominous history, a team of 11 individuals, experienced cavers and government safety experts prepared to venture where few had dared since the cave's closure. Their mission seemed straightforward: test the gas levels and evaluate the cave's conditions. Equipment was checked, safety protocols reviewed, and nervous energy filled the air as they prepared to descend into the unknown. The team included seasoned explorers like Richard, Colin O'Neill, Kurt Wexel, and Renee Van Ruick, each carrying years of experience in cave exploration. Their confidence was built on countless successful expeditions, but Midnight Creek Cave was different. It held a reputation that made even the bravest pause, a reputation it would soon prove was well-deserved. As they stood at the cave's entrance, their helmet lights piercing the thick darkness ahead, none of them could have predicted how this routine expedition would spiral into a fight for survival. The cave's mouth gaped before them like a hungry beast, ready to swallow them whole, its depths holding secrets and terrors that would test their limits of endurance and courage. Little did they know, they were about to become part of one of the most harrowing cave rescue stories ever documented. The darkness ahead held not just scientific discoveries, but a nightmare that would push them to the very edge of human survival. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another terrifying cave exploration story. As always, viewer discretion is advised. The darkness of Midnight Creek Cave held its breath as the team ventured deeper into its treacherous depths. What happened next would become the stuff of cave exploration nightmares. Richard, an experienced caver, found himself at the front of the trailing group, his carbide lamp casting dancing shadows on the wet cave walls. The moment came without warning. As Richard stepped forward, what appeared to be solid ground revealed itself as a betrayer, a deceptively slick, moss-covered rock surface. In a heart-stopping instant, his foot lost all purchase, and the cave seemed to swallow him whole. The narrow vertical chute, barely 3 feet in diameter, became his prison. The horror of the situation became immediately apparent. Richard's body was wedged like a cork in a bottle, his torso twisted at an unnatural angle, and his head submerged in the frigid cave water. His carbide lamp flickered and died during the fall, plunging him into complete darkness, adding another layer of terror to his predicament. The sound of his fall echoed through the cave passages, a haunting reminder of how quickly cave exploration can turn from routine to life-threatening. The chute, with its merciless grip, held him in a standing position that would soon become a battle between life and death. His team members watched in horror as their colleague disappeared into the narrow vertical prison, knowing that every second counted in the fight for survival that was about to unfold. The cave reputation for danger was proving itself true in the most terrifying way possible. The reality of Richard's situation became a living nightmare as he found himself trapped in what could only be described as nature's own torture device. The narrow chute, with its unforgiving walls, held him in a vice-like grip that turned every breath into an agonizing struggle for survival. His body was contorted in ways human anatomy was never meant to endure. The position was excruciating, legs pinned upward, chest compressed against the cold rock, and his torso twisted at an unnatural angle. Each movement, no matter how slight, sent waves of pain through his entire body. The freezing cave water showed no mercy. It surged around him relentlessly, turning something as basic as breathing into a desperate battle. Every few seconds, Richard had to summon what little strength he had left to crane his neck upward, fighting against both exhaustion and the water's pull just to catch a precious gasp of air. But the water wasn't the only enemy. The cave's notorious hydrogen sulfide levels added another layer of terror to his ordeal. Each breath he managed to take could potentially be laced with the deadly gas, turning the very air he needed for survival into a potential killer. The psychological torture was equally devastating. In the pitch darkness, with water filling his nose and mouth, Richard's mind raced with thoughts of drowning, of suffocation, of slowly succumbing to gas poisoning. The cave seemed to be testing how long he could endure this torment, as minutes stretched into what felt like hours in this underground chamber of horrors. His muscles trembled with the strain of keeping his head above water, each moment bringing him closer to exhaustion. The nausea from his twisted position combined with the constant fight against drowning created a hellish experience that would haunt him long after this ordeal was over. The nightmare in Midnight Creek Cave was about to intensify in ways no one could have predicted. Colin O'Neill, watching his friend's desperate situation unfold, made a split-second decision that would turn this rescue attempt into a cascading disaster. In his urgent attempt to save Richard, Colin moved too quickly on the treacherous surface. The same deceptive moss-covered rock that had claimed Richard now betrayed Colin. Time seemed to slow as he too plummeted into the narrow chute, his body crashing down with devastating effect. The impact of Colin's fall drove Richard even deeper into his already precarious position. The cave seemed to tighten its grip as Richard's body was forced further into the constricting passage. His ribs screamed in protest as they pressed harder against the unyielding rock walls, each breath becoming more labored than the last. The team above watched in horror as their rescue mission transformed into a double emergency. The narrow passage that had already trapped one experienced caver now held two of their team members in its grasp. Panic began to spread through the group as they realized the situation had deteriorated from bad to catastrophic. Richard's position became even more dire. Not only was he fighting against the rising water and the threat of toxic gases, but now the additional pressure from Colin's fall had created new complications. The weight and force of the second fall had twisted his body further, creating new points of pain and increasing the difficulty of keeping his head above the waterline. The cave's reputation for danger was proving itself true with cruel efficiency, as what started as a single rescue operation now required a complete reassessment of their strategy. The team's expertise was being tested to its limits, and time was running out for both trapped cavers. In the depths of Midnight Creek Cave, a desperate race against multiple deadly threats was unfolding. Time became the enemy as Richard's condition deteriorated rapidly. His lips had turned an alarming shade of blue, a visible sign of his body's struggle against the cold and lack of oxygen. The invisible threat of hydrogen sulfide gas loomed over the rescue operation like a specter. Each passing minute increased the risk of toxic gas accumulation in the confined space. The team knew that in these underground chambers, the air itself could become a silent killer without warning. Richard's breaths grew increasingly shallow and labored. His body, still trapped in that merciless chute, was losing its battle against exhaustion. Every gasp for air became more challenging than the last, each breath a painful reminder of his precarious situation. His violent coughing and retching echoed through the cave passages, a haunting soundtrack to his struggle for survival. The team watched helplessly as their friend's strength ebbed away. The cold water continued its relentless assault, while the possibility of gas poisoning added another layer of urgency to their rescue efforts. In this underground nightmare, they were racing not just against time, but against the very elements of nature that seemed determined to claim their victim. In the depths of Midnight Creek Cave, a desperate plan was taking shape. The team, now fully aware of the gravity of their situation, split into strategic groups. Renee and Kurt took on the dangerous task of searching for an alternative route, one that might lead them below Richard's position. Their journey was nothing short of harrowing. They squeezed through a water-filled passage, their bodies pressed against cold rock as they navigated the tight confines. Every inch forward was a battle against claustrophobia and the cave's natural resistance to human intrusion. The passage was barely wide enough for their bodies, yet they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their friend's life hung in the balance. Meanwhile, Colin maintained his position near Richard, offering what comfort he could through words of encouragement. The sound of his voice echoed through the cave, a lifeline of hope in the darkness. Despite his own recent fall and rescue, Colin refused to leave his friend's side. Then came Van's arrival, a moment that would prove crucial. Without hesitation or discussion, Van immediately grasped the situation and sprang into action. His quick thinking and experience would become vital components in what was about to become a coordinated rescue effort that would test the limits of their collective skill and determination. Do you want next part?